Now, allow me to begin by reading a short story from the Gospel of Luke. We read in here that Jesus, was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and behold, there was a woman which had a spirit of infirmity 18 years, and was brought together, and could in no wise lift up herself. And when Jesus saw her, he called her to him, and said unto her, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. And he laid his hands on her, and immediately she was made straight, and glorified God. Now, I like the way Luke words the story. Luke tells the story, and while telling the story, his words paint a deeper picture that applies to many of us today, that applies to you and me. The story, as we read it, is of a woman who had a disability and was healed by Jesus, right? It's a great story. It's a miraculous story. But the structure and choice of words tell me a greater story that I want to teach a lesson of. I want to point something out of it today. To those of you who are not familiar, the Bible tells us, Paul tells us in Colossians 4:14, that Luke is a physician. He was a doctor. He says, Luke, the beloved physician, right? So Luke, the writer of this story, is a doctor, is a medical doctor. So he's the perfect man to diagnose a physical illness and give a prognosis of the patient's future, right? However, when he diagnoses the patient, he does not say she had a bulged disc for 18 years, or she had a tumor growing on her spine, or a curved spine, right? He says this woman had a spirit of infirmity, 18 years. Interesting. So Luke, Dr. Luke, diagnoses the cause of her physical infirmity as a spirit of infirmity. So Luke traces the physical problem back to a spiritual reality or a spiritual cause. And he goes on to say that she could in no wise lift herself. Now, he's making a point that the words, that choice of words that are written there, could in no wise lift up herself. It's telling something. It tells us that this woman tried her best, did all what she could to help herself. She if she's living in this day and age, she could have read all kinds of books of self-help. She could have gone to doctors and tried all kind of stuff, but it was all of no use. And then Luke tells us that Jesus, called her to him and said unto her, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. And he laid his hand on her after he said what he said, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. Notice what Jesus does not say. Jesus does not say to the woman, he does not say to the woman, if you believe in me, you can do this. If you trust me, I can heal you. If you let me touch you, you will receive healing. No, Jesus calls the woman and tells her a story. He tells her a fact. He tells her a new reality that he wants her to believe and understand before he touches her. He says to the woman, Woman, thou art loosed from thine infirmity. You have been made well. You are free. You are healed. You are set free. I mean, Jesus hasn't touched her yet. The woman hasn't straightened herself up yet. She's still hunched back, right? But Jesus plants a thought in her mind. Jesus tells her a story to believe. He plants something in her mind, and after he says what he says, he touches her, and the Bible says, and immediately she was made straight and glorified God. Now, there is a very important story behind the story, a message behind the text. Luke tells us that her problem was not a spinal disorder caused by a physical injury. Rather, it was a spiritual problem manifesting itself in a physical reality, right? Luke says she had a spirit of infirmity. It was a spiritual problem manifesting itself in a physical reality. And the solution to it began by Jesus changing the woman's story by giving her a new perspective to see herself by. He tells her, woman, even though you are physically disabled, I need you to know that you are set free, that you are healed. The problem began in the spiritual world, and the solution began in the spiritual world. The problem was manifested in the physical world, and the solution was immediately manifested in the physical world as well. In other words, what I'm trying to point out to you from this story is that there are two worlds. There is the physical world and there is the spiritual world. A surface reading of the text gives a story in the physical reality, but the choice of words gives you the story in its spiritual reality. And because of her physical ailment, the woman was telling herself a story, was seeing herself in a certain perspective, in a worldly or in a fleshly or in a physical perspective because of her physical ailment, right? In his wisdom, Jesus knew that her perspective needed to change before she received the healing. I want you to get that, because I will keep repeating it. I'll keep coming back to it. I will keep approaching it from different perspectives, because I want you to understand that in the mind of Jesus, it was important for the woman to see her story from a different perspective before she receives the healing. So what I want to bring out of this text is that the story we tell ourselves about ourselves is extremely important. That is why Jesus told the woman a new story before he touched her. Jesus knew that the woman's perspective will impact her faith. And to heal her, he had to change her perspective first and then touch her. You cannot separate your faith from your perspective. By perspective, I mean the way you see things, the way you see or understand the situation, the way you see yourself. You cannot see yourself as a lost soul and at the same time tell me you have faith. You cannot see yourself as an unforgiven sinner and at the same time tell me you have faith. You cannot see yourself as a loser and at the same time tell me you have faith. It just doesn't work. Faith impacts your perspective, and your perspective impacts your faith.